This is CRM Audio, the Microsoft Dynamics CRM podcast, with George Dubinsky, Joel Lindstrom, and Sean, the CRM hobbit, Tabor. We are hobbitless this morning. Sean had a obligation for actual work.
I work a lot with US. Currently we're doing training, virtual training, and it could run in the middle of the day or it could run like in the middle of the night. So I have little control of people scheduling it, and they usually schedule it around Pacific Standard Time, so Seattle time zone.
What are your experiences, virtual training versus in-person training? What do you like about the virtual, and what's better about in person?
Well, the virtual, obviously, it's better for participants, right? It's typically delivered in smaller chunks, so you go for two to 3 hours. That's the blocks. So the commitments is less so. Generally speaking, with the training, the biggest investment that is required of people, not so much cost of the training, that's negligible. On a scale of things, it's taken someone out of work for, let's say, 3, 4, 5 days. That's where the cost actually starts to creep in, and that's where it bites. Sure. Definitely you can do it virtual. And if it's timed well, we do like 2 time zones. Typically, it's 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. And 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. So make your pick, and it's regardless where in the world you are, you can make it work. I mean, it is convenient for me as well because I can do like in my pajamas. Who cares, right? So
you're not sharing video of yourself during the course?
Well, I don't want to lose anyone from the audience.
Do you find that the people in the virtual classes are as engaged, or are they more distracted sometimes with virtual courses?
The biggest drawback is that it's very difficult to engage the audience. It's much more difficult. When you're in person, you can grab someone's attention, you can walk to them, you can be persuasive, you can be in their face if need to be, right? With virtual, it's really difficult. If they don't want to engage into discussion, nothing you can do about it. So for most of the time, you're talking to yourself, and that makes it extremely difficult. So yeah, that's the challenge, I guess. Depends on the audience. So if audience is willing, then definitely you can have very good discussions, and you unmute the mics and you have like a room discussion. Sometimes it flows extremely well. Sometimes it's just you're hitting the brick wall, and nothing you can do. Nothing you can do to do it. And on the upside, of course, in every class you've probably done training yourself. In every class you've got this person who believes they know best, and they interrupt, and they're very disruptive to the class. And they do know their stuff, but then they keep asking questions, they keep sidetracking, and in the class, it's typically to shut them off, you have to come up with something to shut them off. Give them a difficult task, give them a challenge. With the virtual, it's much easier. You just mute their mic and say, "Oh, sorry, I can't hear. I think we lost Brian. I think we lost him. Sorry."
We interrupt this podcast for breaking news.
Hello, Joel. I don't know if you can hear me, but I'm in an undisclosed location. I think in a bunker somewhere. I'm embedded with the teams announcing the latest update for Microsoft, Dynamics CRM 2016. I know what you're thinking. I just got my 2015 certifications. What's going on here? But, yep, we got a new solution coming towards the end of this year, probably fourth quarter. More on that dates to come. There's some key features that I don't know if you can hear that noise overhead. That's kind of ominous, but I'm going to try to keep going with this breaking news story. We got enhanced Excel features, really cool templates that make getting the data out of CRM in a way that they can analyze it and make some business decisions much easier and faster. Big fan of that. It looks really cool. They're really trying to focus on creating an immersive experience for users that really eliminates any distractions, getting in and out of CRM and going to another application, generating anything out of CRM, exporting it. They're trying to make that all seamless, and it looks like they're doing a great job. The delve functionality, finally in CRM. This is going to be great. It's easier than ever. You can locate documents, whether it's on SharePoint, OneDrive, or Office 365. And again, seamless. You don't have to leave CRM for that. New Cortana integration. This is kind of cool. They're baking the sales activities, accounts, and contacts into Cortana. So now, she can not only tell you how long it's going to take you to get to the meeting, but she can also tell you about sales opportunities that you have with that account and whether or not it's, going to rain. So that's cool. Lastly, the biggest one for me, new CRM app for Outlook. It's going to really make it easy to create records, to tag emails, to associate things to CRM, from the Outlook client, from the web app, from a mobile device, anywhere you use Outlook, you're going to be able to do it. So we're gonna dig deeper into this when the release preview guide comes out, hopefully in the next week, and we'll get more breaking news on the CRM Audio Podcast. Until then, this is Sean Tabor signing out. Thanks, Joe. Back to you.
This has been Breaking News. We now return you to your normally scheduled podcast. So Sean, our newsman, he is gone today. We'll have to carry on with the news without him. There's not a lot of Dynamics specific news. I guess we're kind of in the brief lull before the airlifts for the ARA release and the flood of information that's going to come later in the fall. The first story I had was actually from the other guys. Salesforce has announced their new Salesforce Lightning UI. We'll link to a blog post by Jukka Nirinen, which Jukka is a great blogger, and he always writes very lengthy blog posts. I usually write short little blurbs, and Jukka writes the Encyclopedia Britannica. But his stuff is always very insightful, very good analysis of the difference. And George, I don't know about you, but I think everybody in the CRM community that saw the screenshots of the Salesforce Lightning had the same reaction. That was, something looks familiar here. What did you think?
Yeah, look, in parts, yes. But you know that in the world of software, borrowed ideas, sometimes they can thrive and take life of their own, and it's all about execution.
In Jukka's blog post, he enumerates several things that are the same, and it's striking to see the screenshot he has of the two opportunity screens side by side, because I mean it's strikingly similar. They both
look.
You have
Absolutely.
the icon in the front. You have the process flow. You have the tabbed social pane, things like that. So I think definitely. I've recently read the book The Innovators by Walter Isaacson, which goes to what you're talking about. It's a history of the digital revolution, and computers, internet, World Wide Web, and it makes that point very clearly that there is no truly revolutionary or no new ideas. It's all building on stuff. And the great quote that I'd heard before, but he had in there, was basically when Xerox had the graphical user interface first. Apple saw that and they incorporated that into the Mac, and then in the what was it, the late 80s, whenever Windows
That's
1.0 came out, Steve Jobs, yelled at Bill Gates and said, "You're ripping us off." And Bill said, "Well, Steve, I think there's more than one way of looking at it. I think we both have this rich neighbor named Xerox, and I broke into his house to steal his TV and found you'd already taken it." So it's like, so I think it's two things. I think there definitely is, and I would be the first to say that in CRM 2013 there were things that they took from Salesforce. There's things you could point at. So there's no truly revolutionary idea, but I also think that some of the things that are happening, you can have two different people take different paths and get to the same conclusion. And I think a lot of the way we're seeing user interfaces and user experiences going is based on research into UX, based on user feedback, and following that course, you will ultimately come to a similar place. That's why all your smartphones are continually getting more similar. Partly it's borrowing ideas, but partly it's just the force of
Correct.
innovation.
Yeah, it's to some extent like usability is no matter what you say about it, it's partially it's art, but to a large extent it's a science, and science of crunched numbers and a minimal path to the conclusion of the movement, for example, of your hand movement and your mouse movement and so forth. So how many, let's say, if research says that horizontal process, step-by-step process is one of the most efficient way to represent staged navigation or staged process, right? How many ways you can represent that?
Right.
And that's basically what it boils down to. So it's a common idea. But look, I find it hard to believe that, say, designers who worked on Lightning interface, they didn't see Microsoft CRM. I think they turned inside out Microsoft Dynamics CRM. They looked into NetSuite. They pulled apart Siebel. They dealt with, SAP and Oracle and what's not. I think they would have investigated all possible user interfaces.
Right.
So it as I said, it depends how organic, whether you make it work. It's all, it will be down to details, whether it works or not. I would say that in Dynamics it started to work only when we got some scripting going for the processes.
Mm-hmm. It wasn't until the second generation.
Yeah, that's right. So the first was really lots of teething problems. There was like a nice eye candy, but it was difficult to make it work in real projects. And second generation, it's kind of, I wouldn't say it's spot on, but it's a huge step forward, and it's now usable. So now we can kind of go on with our lives and start using it on every project.
Well, and also just the change from 2011 to 2013, there was a lot of pain with that for users that were used to the way it was making the switch. It wasn't easy just to get over. What do you mean I don't have the tabs on the form and things like that? And I'm sure it's going to be the same way for that. There's always disruption. It's always painful.
I'm curious how Salesforce is going to handle transition. Is it user choice, or it all forced down your throat?
I think it's user choice. They've said that they're going to be supporting the classic UI indefinitely. So there are though differences though. It's not just that they're copying. There are features.
I like the idea of Kanban boards, using them in the software development a lot. They give some visibility, but I have to say that I'm kind of a bit skeptical about these approaches. They may work. But to me, it's like it's a gamey approach in line with the gamification of the entire sales process. And Kanban board, I don't know. I like my wife's assessment of Kanban process when she looked at it and she read about it and said, well, you know what? It was invented at the factory, right? It was, I think Toyota was the first one to invent it.
Right.
And she said that's what it's good for making sausages. Right. So when there is a bit of thinking involved, it fails.
Good user experience is a positive thing, and innovations made by Salesforce, you will spurn more innovation by Dynamics, and we'll wind up with better applications. Our next story was the Dynamics team has released a new white paper about how synchronization works. This is kind of an update on one of my favorite white papers. And again, there's white papers all the time, but I think this one especially, if you haven't seen it, I would definitely go get it, because one of the questions that comes up almost every implementation I do is how the synchronization works, not only for the online synchronization or the Outlook synchronization, but also the offline synchronization. And this does a really great job, I think, of kind of explaining the way it works, because the way that the synchronization works, especially when you get to when things get deleted or whatever, is kind of a dark art. And so I'm really glad to see that they've updated this, because I was still using the one from CRM4 and with the caveat. Now this is a little bit outdated, but it's still pretty accurate. Now it's good to have one I can actually give people and say, here's an up-to-date. Even talking about server sync, it mentions the folder synchronization. Great job to the team on getting this updated.
Just explain why server-side mailboxes tend to die every few days.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't do that. I have seen, just anecdotally, we had a lot of problem with that, and in the last month and a half or so, I've got to say ours has been better. And I know the support team said, at least in North America, they had applied some fixes to make online stay better. I have found, though, for some weird reason where we'll have like one or two users who get disabled more than others. Have you seen that?
Yes, we're seeing the same. You've got like cursed users who actually disabled every 2 days, and then the rest is fine. But people just mailboxes are fine. I don't know, and it's not related to a size of the mailbox or anything like that. We didn't find any particular dependencies, but I think we did one of the tips I need to find is how to create a workflow that would alarm you about those mailboxes being disabled, because one of the biggest problems, or one of my biggest complaints about current implementation, is that the alarms are very passive.
Mm-hmm.
It's impossible to create kind of the alarm structure is non-existent. So it would be nice to be able to create custom alarms as administrator, right? Create custom alarms and say notify me when this and this happens. And it needs to be proactive without me going into CRM or anything like that. I want to receive email, SMS, message. You name it. So I need to have, as administrator, I want infrastructure, notification infrastructure.
Yeah, one thing I did on that, I set up a view of mailboxes that fit a certain criteria. Basically, mailboxes set to server sync where enabled equaled no, and I put that on a dashboard. But you're right, some kind of a notification email or something would be great for that. The other thing that, and I don't know, Again, I've got all anecdotal stuff. I can't make a tip of the day about this because I can't say this fixed or not. But I realized we have a subset of users that are in Canada and are on a different exchange system than the U.S. users, and they don't sync anything or don't want to sync anything, so I hadn't paid any attention to them. But what I realized was that
I thought you're not paying attention because they're in Canada.
Well, that too. But no. But I had their profile set to server sync, which of course would fail. So what I thought, I said maybe that's confusing CRM a little bit. I don't know, because every time I would enable the mailboxes, I would enable them too, then they would fail, and probably was causing delays for other people. So I went ahead and set them all to Outlook sync so that it wouldn't even try for them. And the experience has been better since then. So maybe that was contributing to the factor. But yeah, I can point to 2 users in our environment that I just can't get it to work. Now, here's the other thing I found is because we switched from Outlook sync to server sync. Outlook sync to server sync midstream. We'd be going Outlook sync, and then when server sync became available, we switched to it. But some of our users who had the Outlook client installed a long time, I swear that their Outlook client was still trying to sync. I can't prove it, but there was just all kinds of issues, but reconfiguring their Outlook fixed a lot of issues for them. Like, we had duplicate contacts being created. Some of these guys who are salespeople that run 3 different machines and had the Outlook client set to be syncing on all of them, I swear some of them had a Surface or something they only fire up occasionally, and when they fired it up, it tried to sync or something. And then reconfiguring that cleared out a bunch of our issues.
Oh, look, syncing is challenging. Regardless what you say, it is challenging. Basically, from what I know, there was an attempt, if you remember, SQL Server used to come with synchronization framework.
Right.
It was a great attempt to actually create a synchronization, I don't know, SDK on top of that, and Microsoft went like version 2.1, then there was a silence, then version 4, and then guess what? The next thing, they just drop it out. They dropped it completely. So whatever is there, synchronization framework, but it just highlighted how difficult it is to synchronize systems.
Anybody who criticizes the way the Outlook client syncs, I agree it's not perfect, but I always ask them, find me something that synchronizes better than it, because I've tried the Google Contact Sync. That thing created so many duplicates on my phone, I had to remove it. And this is why the other reason it's more complicated now than it used to be is everybody has a smartphone. Everybody has apps like the LinkedIn app, the Facebook app, Google Contacts, even their Microsoft Outlook.com that's syncing, and in some cases updating the same contacts. And we had the experience where Captain Red Laces, he could not change his mobile number because he would change his mobile number and then it would get reverted back. And we found it was something like the LinkedIn app or something like that on somebody's phone was overriding it, and then that was syncing back to CRM.
Tell me about it, about the things you cannot change. I found the new great font. Like, as a developer, I always want to look out on a good font to develop. Like, I've been using Consoles for a while, and now there's a open source font called Hack, and it's great because it's got very distinctive, like O and 0, Z and 2, L and 1. You can tell them apart. And I changed it in Visual Studio 2013. It was fine. But in 2015, I've got this bizarre behavior. I go into settings, and I change the font, and I can see on the screen my text changes, the font changes, and then 2 seconds later it changes back. And it's just been driving me nuts. I can't change it. It just seems to be stuck on this console. And Visual Studio 2015 says, you know what? Forget it. It kind of tries the font and says, nah, don't like it. Change it back. And I reinstalled, I flushed the settings, I did everything I could. It still reverts to old fonts, so I just gave up. But it's really annoying when you can't change something and you change. I hear you. So yeah, with synchronization, it's definitely with a number of sources. I don't know where this information is coming from. I don't know where avatars are coming from, emails. I'm seeing my own US numbers that I dropped out like 3 years ago. They keep popping up from somewhere. I don't know where from. So it's definitely very, very challenging. But my complaint to CRM team is probably that the login for administrators, you have to agree, it could have been done a bit better, because currently it's borderline on useless. It tells me mailbox, experienced an error, been disabled, end of story, bye-bye.
Right.
So it doesn't tell me anything. And it tells me today, right? That's all like, oh, it's for something that happened like yesterday, it would give me a date timestamp. But if mailbox was disabled today and I want to know when exactly, I can't tell. I'm looking at the screen and it's being too friendly with the administrator. That's the last
tell
person
me verbose what happened, what message made it fail, was it a timeout, how many times did it retry, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Just detailed log would be definitely helpful, and it just doesn't work.
What is this series of videos we've been having on Tip of the Day? I've been watching some of these, and these are great. Derek Borman has been creating these great.
I've been working with Derek for a while. He's one of the trainers on CRM Academy. That's the ones we're doing virtual trainings with. We're working closely with the Partner Readiness Program with Microsoft and internal readiness program as well. For example, we're doing CRM immersion program where new hires going through the rapid baptized by fire program. So it's kind of boot camps and all sort of stuff. So anyway, so he's a great trainer and great presenter, and despite the fact that he lives in Fargo, but you know that there's a lot of support people come. Dynamic support lives in Fargo.
Right. Yeah, and that's where Tony Stein, who was with us last week from CRMUG, that's where he lives too.
Correct.
Yeah. Fargo's great.
Yeah,
I was born not too far away from Fargo in Minnesota, and it's my part of the country.
Yeah, I understand, but you have to give us a slack, because the rest of the world knows Fargo as what they've seen in the movie, and it strikes as an extremely, dark place.
It's flat. There's long winters. There's not a lot to do, so it's more productive to do CRM videos than the alternative, I guess. There's 10 of these videos, and they're really good, and what I love about them, I don't know how he's putting all these videos together so quickly, but he's had one a week. We've been doing them every Friday for the last 10 weeks, and especially if you want to get a how-to on the new stuff like the folder level tracking, I use that when I set it up, and there were one or two steps that I was overlooking. And I mean, it's great. He very, very clear to understand. Very good production quality on them.
Yeah, look, he's been doing a great job, and we're trying to split when applicable videos like folder tracking. There's one for admins and the one for end users. And we're trying to keep them. The idea was that on Friday you come into the office, you grab your coffee. It's a slow day, slow Friday, and we keep video. It's like whilst you're having coffee, you can watch this video. So to keep it like 5, 6, 7. We do run longer, like on some of them, like it's 10 minutes. But generally, the rule of thumb is that we're trying to keep it around 5 minutes mark. Yeah, we've been doing great, and Derek's been doing a great job. So I think we'll continue. We're getting some hits. We're getting positive feedback. So we'll keep going.
Yeah, I like it because there's a lot of the new stuff that there isn't a ton of videos out there for. Like mobile, I think partly because mobile is a little bit more trickier to do screenshots of and things like that. That one of the reasons why there isn't as much. So it's great to have this content. I would love to see some videos going back into some of the dusty back alleys, some of the stuff that there might not be a lot of videos about. Maybe things like quotes as well. things that people are still very
That would
interested.
be interesting. That would be interesting. I definitely we should sit down for about 10 minutes with Derek and work out what videos we're going to do. As you see, he's very efficient. I can't put videos at that speed. I can't possibly. He says like, oh, I'll give you a video by tomorrow, and tomorrow he gives like a 10 minutes professional video. So that would take me like 2 weeks to put together. So he's very productive. So if we get some ideas, I'm sure we can line up a good series. And we invite in like people send us tips. What would you like to see? Like jar and crmtipoftheday.com. Send your ideas there, and we'll do our best to create those videos.
Yeah, we should mention that we're always open to guest contributions as well. And you don't have to be an MVP or anything. You don't even have to be a CRM consultant. You can be just a user, and those are, in my opinion, some of the best tips because they come from real world users. And so send them on. We'll give you
one
credit.
Of the populars. We do have a couple tips from end users, and they've been doing great. People engaging with those. And surprisingly, where to find stuff like the latest on where to find good icons.
Right.
It's like people don't know how to use Google.
I love that. I love that tip because we had 4 or 5 people pop up in the comments and do it. And here's the thing with the icons is, the old way I had of getting icons was go to Google image search and search for an image. And the icons, if you take the icons that somebody did for 2011 and look at especially 2015 update 1, changed the way that the sizing or something. All the icons from many environments I looked at look grainy. Even some ISV solution icons look grainy. So what I was looking for in that tip was good flat icons that a good search engine, and some of these sites have like 15,000 flat icons, and it's something I don't think about a lot.
I think that it's important to have user contributions on this one. The problem with images and icons is when you do a Google search. When I said people don't know how to use Google, I was kidding, because when you do search like on image or icons, you get commercial suppliers virtually taking over the first 3 pages.
Right.
To find a good source of free icons of decent quality, you have to painstakingly go through like multiple pages and navigate and do your homework. And those people who commented, they actually done their homework. So we've got like 4 or 5 sources of awesomeness. I checked that out, and those, they do not appear on 5 first pages of Google search. And
right. You want to talk about your tool?
Lately, I acquired an editor fetish. I'm on a search. I'm on a quest to find the perfect editor. I use Visual Studio a lot, but at the same time, you want something lightweight. And though I do use Notepad++, which is very lightweight and very fast, so I like using it instead of built-in Notepad, which is kind of has its limitations. But recently I came across, and I've got like 6 editors installed, but the one definitely caught my attention. It's called Atom. So you find it at atom.io. That's community like it's atom.io. It's open source editor. I mean, if you followed my previous favorite tool, Chocolati, then your install becomes something like choco space install space atom, or atom, depends how you say it. So, and press enter and watch the download and install doing. It's very extensible. It's got this very extensible architecture, and it's got previews and like Markdown. It supports full-on Markdown previews. I'm a big fan of Markdown as language to write README files and some documentation. So it's got tons of features. It's got tons of add-ins or plugins. Supported extensible open source architecture. It's actually awesome. It's a bit on the heavy side, so it doesn't come up like instantly like Notepad++, But for everyday editing, when I don't want to fire up Visual Studio, it's more than enough. It's kind of my...
Let's dig into this a little bit deeper. Why do you think you have this fetish for editors? Is it, do you use them all, or do you just like changing editors? Why do you use so many editors?
Yeah, look, let's start from the beginning. Like, there was a notepad, right?
Right.
And you soon find
the way the old pros did it.
Yeah, but sooner or later you find the limitations of Notepad. You hit it, you can't do this, you can't do that. It doesn't do. We kind of raise the bar, so the expectations are for editors to understand the syntax of what you write in. So if you write and do a bit of syntax highlighting, help you to find brackets and what's not. And things like that, indent and indent, formatting, search and replace, very powerful, like regex-based search and replace. So we expect something from editors. And some people might say, look, you find it all in VI. Like, I'm not, a VI user, so I can't say. Probably you do. But then on the other hand, you've got the powerhouse like Visual Studio. But when you're browsing your code and you're looking for something on the disk and you come across of the file, like it could be a source like C# file or JavaScript file, and you want to just pick inside, you don't want to fire up Visual Studio to do that, okay? Notepad is not enough, Visual Studio too much. So what do? So you want everyday editor for text files, for XML files, for things like that, right? And so I've been searching like Notepad++, as I said, been my editor, but I find it's got lots of features, but they're very generalized features. They're not specific. So I started looking for around. Every time I come across an editor that looks promising, I would install it. So currently, and just try it out. So currently I'm running, Notepad. I'm running Notepad++. I'm running Atom. I'm running Visual Studio, and I'm running Brackets, which is Adobe Editor, which is promising you HTML heaven. If you edit in HTML by hand, it promises you, everything you want.
Okay. So I guess to go with the Goldilocks analogy, Notepad is too soft, Visual Studio too hard. Just want to open something up. Atom is just right.
Yeah, pretty much. Right now it feels right, and I like the tools that you can configure. Sometimes I like the tools when decisions is kind of made on your behalf and say that's the way it is, take it or leave it, right? And you say okay, whatever. But sometimes you want flexibility, and this one depending on what you actually what you're actually using, what languages you're using, and so forth. So for example, I started using Markdown a lot, so I want to tune and use Markdown, and one of the things I do want with Markdown is, for example, a preview. So Notepad doesn't give me a preview on Markdown. Visual Studio doesn't give me. There's Visual Studio add-on for Markdown. I don't know, but say Atom has a special add-on for Markdown out of the box. So anyway, I do enjoy it. It's community-based. It's extendable. So it's kind of my current choice of editor. I don't know. I may change my mind in the future, but works for me. So I keep them around, and depending on what I feel like. Oh, and there is another editor. Let me see if I do have it. Yes, that's the editor called CodeWriter. That's the editor. It's a Windows app. I use it when I'm on the run and I'm using my Surface as a tablet, because it's an app and it's designed to run extremely well as an app in a tablet mode.
Okay, so you'll use it in touch mode on your Windows tablet?
Correct, yeah, because other editors, they fall into these tiny fonts and, can't pick the buttons. This one in the tablet mode, like you've got big buttons. It's
if you're looking at Visual Studio on a Surface, the resolution is so high that the buttons all get really small. So, Atom and CodeWriter, those are your two tools this week. Let's introduce our guest. Our guest is Chris Cognetta. Chris is from the Miami area, so we don't have Sean Tabor with us this week, but we've replaced him with another Floridian.
Hey, good morning. Different size and different size though.
Chris is a Dynamics CRM MVP. He also serves as a practice director for TriBridge, in charge of the client field engineering team. And Chris, I believe you're also over the customer support area as well. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. I also run global support operations for TriBridge.
Cool. Okay. Well, there's a lot of things that I want to talk to you about. I have some questions for you as well, but one of the reasons, Chris, I wanted you to come on was to try and kind of demystify the confusing world of IFD. Every time I've had an IFD question, it seems like Chris has the answer. And IFD, for those of you who may not know or may not be CRM administrators, IFD, what we're talking about is making CRM externally available for on-premises. It also gets into, with the Active Directory Federation services, doing things like single sign-on for CRM Online as well. And so,
for those who don't know, Chris goes by the nickname of Mr. ADFS. So.
Oh God!
So Chris, first question. ADFS for some reason has this mysterious quality to it that makes a lot of novice CRM admins shudder. So I guess, why does that have to be so complicated?
Yeah, so really the first thing is that a lot of people don't understand all of the components needed in the PKI infrastructure or a public key infrastructure to support the use of ADFS and IFD. Simply said, that's the use of certificates, web servers, authentication, service accounts, PKI or your actual CA certificate authorities, understanding how to manage the key of those certificates, the network and domain privileges required to set this up, firewall routing, DNS entries. I mean, you can just tell. There you go, right? I mean, you got a lot of technology there that has it gotten better? Yes. I mean, you look at some of the stuff that installs today, they're creating SPNs and doing things like that. But it takes someone that has all those skills, or it takes a collaborated group of people. So when you hear me talk about it, it's actually one of the first slides I talk about when we teach this at Convergence is here's the skill sets of what you would need to help you. This is not something you're going to go about on yourself and just going to, you're going to watch a video, so to speak, and you're going to answer how to do it. It's going to be different based on your security setup, how your firewall is routed, what proxy servers you have available, and then you're going to need the people who are the experts in those subject matter experts right there. So don't try to go about it yourself. Make sure you have the people there to support you. If you're a small guy and you're doing the network and you've got access to the router and you got a DNS server and you can do all that, then yes, you could do it yourself. But that's really what it is, Joel. It's the understanding of the different technologies, how they play together. And then the second piece about ADFS that really bunks everybody is the fact that it's very caching intensive. So you could do everything absolutely right. And if you don't clear the browser cache at the right time, you will not be able to log in.
Right.
And that's another thing. I tell people, IIS reset, continuously throughout the process. Ensure your browser cache is cleaned. Even use private mode to ensure that you're not going to have a bad DNS or a bad endpoint. Because what happens is you'll set the whole thing up correctly, and it won't work. I can't tell you how many customers or even some of my MVP friends who I've logged in and just the first thing I did was IIS reset on both the ADFS server, CRM server, and boof, it's up. And they're like, "Are you kidding me?"
The magic Cognetta touch to make that work.
But, and when we train my team, it's the same scenario. You got to follow through those steps. I've actually worked with Microsoft on the documentation to help clear up some points. There was some confusing stuff in there with the STS name, being interchangeable with the ADFS and auth service. So you need to make sure that, that made it a little bit easier. But, another one is the security, right? A lot of companies do not want to use wildcard certificates.
Right.
And with ADFS, you have the capabilities of using both one wildcard certificate or one subject alternative name or SAN certificate.
Or SAN, yeah.
And with the SAN certificate, from a maintenance perspective, if something changes, you add an org, whatever you want to do there, you have to update and reissue that certificate for any name changes. So we, technically in the security world, they don't like wildcard certificates, but when you look at most organizations, they're using a wildcard to do exchange. They're using a wildcard to handle their internal SharePoint. Everything's using that certificate. So to add CRM to that is not a greater risk, right? To use that certificate.
Let's come back to the enterprise security concerns, because I did want to get your take on some of that. I guess one of the ways I learn more from mistakes I've made and mistakes other people made than sometimes just reading the book. So what are maybe the top 3 or 4 mistakes you see people make in their ADFS deployments?
Yeah, the best one used to be 2008 server. In 2008, Microsoft closed what they call a loopback security hole, where the server actually could not identify itself, right? So when you try to go out to the browser, unless you're using localhost, which is going to break, there's no way to actually it's its name in the DNS, right?
So that was why you couldn't get to CRM from its own server, right?
There you go. Yep. And the same true for ADFS, right? They both couldn't see each other, although if you put the IP address in it, it worked fine. So people couldn't figure that out. Well, there's a registry key called the back host connection names, and all you need to do is add that registry key, put the server name in there, IIS reset, and then all of a sudden the machines work. So that was primarily the common problem for the server. The other issue was the actual URL that people enter into the server. They were confused with whether it was where the auth service ran, where the ADFS service ran, and a lot of people don't know that CRM itself has a built-in auth service as well. Mm-hmm. So if you actually go to the CRM server and you type in the same URL path and don't realize you're on the wrong one, it will return a page. It will give you a result. So I've seen people configure their systems to that and cause that issue. But really, besides IIS reset, that was the number one problem and constraint.
Okay.
The second one that I could bring up is not using host names. So DNS is required. You can enter in one host name for an IP address for a machine, then you can put all kinds of alias on top of that. Well, that doesn't work well for an ADFS IFD enabled system. They need every entry to be a host name in the system. So most network administrators will hear that and laugh at you and say, yeah, and they'll still do alias. Well, what happens is ADFS is actually translating that entire string for the URL. It's looking through it and saying, hey, I need that whole relative path. Well, when you do the redirect by using an alias, it redirects to the other name, and that really messes things up.
Sure.
So when you see that, what I like to tell people is before you even try to start to configure your server, ADFS, etc., make sure that you get on the box and you ping out all of those names, do an IP config flush, right? Flush out your DNS, and then ping each name and make sure each name is coming back with the correct IP address. Then, if you have access, go into the DNS server and look up to make sure they're all host names. If you don't have access, ask for a screenshot of the host names and where they are. And that can solve a lot of problems right there, too. So I'll say that's number 1 and number 2.
As you know that to get OS going, we need ADFS 3.0, the one that comes with 2012 server, what's not, right?
Yep.
So currently we have environment we're hosting, so we use ADFS running on 2008 R2, ADFS 2.1, been running for years. It's working. I don't want to touch it, right?
Right.
Are there any dangers of bringing actually a separate ADFS server with a separate name and let's say my 2015, so we're hosting, say, 2011 that uses the other one, and 2013, but 2015, my 2015 CRM, I want to point to the new ADFS, to ADFS 3.0.
Sure.
Are they completely separate, or are they going to mess each other up?
Yeah, so good question, George. And the way I would answer this is we do this a lot for customers who have specific dev, test, and production environments, right? They're on the same domain, but they would like to have multiple servers there. And you can run multiple ADFS servers. It's really what you're think about the ADFS server as the gateway to authentication to both AD and the end user, and give you the screen pop to log in and pass credentials. That's really what it's doing, right? So if you doing that and configuring that CRM instance to use a different ADFS server is not a problem. I've also seen both versions of ADFS on two different Windows Server versions. So 2008 running a CRM 2011 or 2013 environment, right? And then a brand new 2015 environment running 2012 with ADFS. I don't call it ADFS 3.0 because Microsoft doesn't like the term, but obviously between our circles, that's what we call it. But it's really just now it's a server-based role, right? A little different than the one you had to download. But for the most part, as long as you can have as many ADFS instances as you want, and you can set up the different servers, it's all based on the URL at the end of the day, George.
Okay, great.
So going back to the enterprise clients, what do you say when you're meeting with, say, a prospective bank or enterprise company that has a policy that says none of our internal servers can be externally facing, and they want to like separate the website for CRM from the back end of the system, and when it comes down to it, you have to have the CRM server available externally. You can use reverse proxies and stuff, but even so, there are certain enterprise clients that does not satisfy the fears of their network security folks.
Yeah, so it's a very good and long-winded answer I have to give you. The first thing starts off with is educating them on how ADFS is deployed, not only in their infrastructure, but how it's deployed out at Microsoft. Microsoft's entire Office 365 network, Azure, CRM Online, etc., Xbox are all based on the ADFS federation model. So this is not a IIS server that somebody roguely launched out there and it has no testing and it's just being configured. This is a true hardened network component that's being used by many different services for a long period of time. I mean, it's been going on since prior to Hotmail, okay? So now as far as that's the technology piece. As far as the issue that most organizations, and I'm going to say it's not most anymore, maybe it's 70% of organizations still go with a traditional DMZ approach. The DMZ approach is where your servers, as you mentioned, Joel, are sitting out in the zone that don't have any access to the internal servers. Or, in the other case, they don't want to open up that zone to allow internal users access to it. Well, your big constraint with a dynamic CRM platform is that every instance of a web server, platform server, etc., must use the same domain account in the application pool.
Right.
And because of that, that's where you start getting into conversations on, in a DMZ world, there's typically a DMZ domain, and there's your internal domain. They don't cross over intentionally. That was the way security was designed. So a lot of those people look at VPN solutions. They want to use a mobile type of capability for VPNing or VPN off of their desktop, laptop, etc., and that's okay. But I have the conversation with them. We're in a mobile world. Everything is tablet. Everything is phone-based. People, the days of people carrying laptops around, I don't see anymore. I know you guys go out like I do, and we see everybody very limited they're on their devices, whatever it may be, and they might have 3 or 4 of them. So managing VPN clients and dealing with that is not an efficient way. And there's lots of other ways to deal with security. For example, just because you have connectivity to the system, their concerns are the person no longer works there. Well, it's no different than removing the AD domain, removing or disabling their user account, regardless what solution you choose, right? So it's not more or less secure. So the challenge comes in is how do you deploy that? And there's different models to deploy ADFS in the DMZ. One of them is using the new, it used to be called the ADFX proxy server. Now it's gone to the IAS web proxy. But installing that out in your DMZ along with a front-end CRM web server to run both your requests, etc. But it will require a read-only domain controller sitting out there, or you'll have to punch a hole from that AD internally to your AD internal. The proxy server can sit on a non-domain member, so there's no challenge there. But that's how you get around to live in a DMZ world. But you'll see that more organizations are looking at point-to-point where they can control that they know that that server sitting outside their firewall is only talking to this particular server on the inside of the firewall, and the multiple platforms of Dynamics can support that nicely.
We found that using, and we have a tip of the day on that, using IAS application request routing works extremely well for CRM. So you put IAS and naked IAS with application request routing in your DMZ. This server is not part of the main, and that server would route requests into your CRM server. So we have a client who said they want access to CRM from specific ranges of IP addresses. We put a small server for them, put some rules in there, and it works like a charm.
Yeah, you can do that through your firewall as well, right? You can allow just routes to that from those IP addresses. Some of that's a challenge when you're dealing with like a cloud service like Azure or CRM Online. You're not able to identify the range of IP addresses coming back into your network, so you can't lock it out by that. But certainly, knowing the IP address that it's coming from and locking down traffic to that is one. And George, that's really the old ISIS firewall method, if you remember that, right?
In our case, it's a bit more challenging because we're hosting for multiple people, and we need to filter these guys, but not anyone else. So we have to put some tricky rules that involve server headers and all sort of stuff. So, but it works all right. It works well. So
yeah. Well, I'll tell you that when you get into a hosting type scenario and you're dealing with multiple organizations, routing, etc. I always like a hardware device, and I'm a big fan of the F5. The F5 can do everything you're talking about as far as migrating, moving that stuff around. The F5 is a load balancer product. It can handle these application tricky redirections, and you guys know our sister company is Concerto Cloud, and we do host a lot of CRM customers out there, and the F5 is a part of that strategic infrastructure to support just what you're talking about, George.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, except not everyone's got the same depth in their pockets as you guys do. So
hey, Chris, next time you're in a security meeting, I want you to say DMZ and see what people say.
DMZ? You got it.
Yeah, and this is, we've actually had clients where they have, concerns at, say, a bank, where they have concerns about, exposing internal networks, that they say, we're just going to go online. And, that's definitely an option too, where if, you have internal policies that say internally installed systems can't be exposed externally, and you can't get past that checkbox on the check sheet, going online is an option. So
online is definitely an option. You can do today's newly emerging model is hybrid cloud, right? Where that you're actually using a cloud provider to host your CRM, and then from that cloud provider out is going one side, and then on the internal mechanism there's a VPN or a dedicated connectivity back to your enterprise network, and then you can control access that way as well. So a lot of different new options coming with hybrid, combination of both CRM Online, Azure, and private cloud services. You're going to see that grow more and more and more. You're actually going to see it move where you can actually move the workload around too. So some nice things coming in regards to that.
We've talked about that before. I'd like you to put your support director hat on. And I was curious, what are maybe the top things that you're getting support questions about these days? It's always interesting to talk to the guys who actually do support or are involved with support, because they are the closest to the real concerns of issues that users are seeing. And so, what are you seeing as the most common questions your support people are getting these days?
Yeah, we refer to it as the bleeding edge. So, it's really interesting, because if you look at CRM 4 through CRM 2011, the number one problem was Outlook client. And you look at 2013, how that disappeared. We're starting to see it come back in the 2015 space. We don't have 100% focus on why yet. It's not like, there's a specific reason. Maybe it's a little buggy, but we're working through that to determine what it is. So I'm not going to say it's number one anymore, but that would be the obvious. Everyone will say that's the first one. The second one that comes in, believe it or not, is solutions. And customers who are developing and building their own solutions, and how to migrate that coming across from both a dev and test environment. Do I use it managed? Do I use it unmanaged? And then they get into a situation where it's lost. They don't know, developer took the managed solution. They have to delete it now. They can't rebuild it. So those are certainly challenges from a support perspective. The other is the ADFS expiring token. ADFS will expire every couple months, depending on what it's set up for. And if you have both the ADFS token expiring and then you have the SSL certificate expire. So if you don't have a SSL certificate wildcard that's out, maybe a 5-year block that you buy, then every year when that certificate goes, your CRM system is going to have to go down for maintenance to reuse a new certificate. So you have that challenge.
Why can't anybody log into CRM this morning?
Exactly. And it usually will be on the busiest day of the year, or it will be on a Monday morning. It just happens to fall that way. The other would be, I'm not going to say connectivity, but again, back to the Outlook client, not understanding how to configure it. You certainly can turn on sync and bring a lot of data back and forth between your client and your server machine. And what happens there is now you over-flooded the network. People are wondering, hey, what's going on? Why did all of a sudden, CRM slow down? We didn't add any more users. We didn't add any more data. And then you realize that someone enabled syncing across a couple different clients. So that's also been a challenge, right?
Right.
So now if you look at, so those are really like, so solutions, Outlook client, those are key ones. Some of the other ones that come up are actual server maintenance. So, and this is a big movement of why people want to go to CRM Online or a private cloud. They don't want to deal with it. But when you have your own server, you need to take care of the async logs, for instance. You need to make sure your POA table's clear. You need to make sure you have proper backups and you're doing indexes, you're re-indexing, as you add data, et cetera, because that's all adding to the performance and slowing things down when you execute both your plugins, your workflow, et cetera. So I would tell you that performance tuning in some type of scenario is a large one, whether it falls into it's because I didn't do my maintenance, or it falls into that I never really see if my application can scale. It's a wide scale between those items. But looking at things like RSI for SQL and tuning SQL with the tuning wizard, making sure your DBAs understand the indexes, integrations that get stuck. Those are also another one that I'll add to the list is integrations, whether it's Scribe, Kingsway Soft, Cozy Rock. There's always something going on where someone ran a query where it's got a lock on the database. You can't get an update. How do you deal with that? Those are certainly the challenges to come across.
My favorite is the integration where the original estimate by the client was we're going to have about 500 records per day changing, and you find it's like 500,000.
Right.
And
right.
It's the 30-minute integration is now taking 9 hours to complete.
Yeah, well, not only that, but now you're looking at, we've been using dynamic CRM since 1.0, right? There's some customers, 3.0 is more common, but there's some customers that have been with Dynamics that entire period of time. That's 10, 12 years worth of data in a platform now. And there's no archive solution that I know of. I don't know if you guys know of one, but there's no archive solution available that you press a button and it archives off data into a separate database. And now, other than a bulk delete, right, that you can use. And that's something that's, that we definitely are pushing for from an MVP perspective of, hey, we need, you guys are doing this, we're adding that. Let's look at an archive solution to help users with this problem. What's happening is the reports, the usability of the platform, performance, it's all being impacted based on how much data is in the platform. So, you've had your system for a while. It's a time to look at that, and, that's also something to look at during upgrades. So when you have an upgrade, I like to make a decision on, am I upgrading or am I re-implementing? And people go, ooh, re-implementing, right? Well, re-implementing could be, I'm going to bring over my customizations after I upgrade to a plain org and maybe only bring over 2 years worth of data or 3 years worth of data. That's something that can be decided during an upgrade process versus dealing with poor performance.
Right. My rule of thumb is if you're on CRM 4 or earlier and you're going to 2015, it's really time to think, should we just re-implement instead of upgrade? Because sure, you can upgrade, but there's so many jumps you got to go through, so many places it can fail, so many differences in the security settings, things like that, that is this risk worth it, or could we spend that money on a better, maybe reconfiguring it to work better rather than just bringing it all over all the other stuff we had?
When you look at the new out-of-the-box feature capabilities that weren't available in 4 in 2011 that are now available in 2013, 2015, there's a lot of things that we don't have to do anymore with JScript, right?
Sure.
There's a lot of things that we can do from forms perspective, from the database setup, from field security, from auditing. A lot of those pieces of code we no longer need. They're all built into the platform. So I agree with you on that, and the fact that encouraging your users or your project to look at the out-of-the-box features and put away the customizations, it makes a lot easier upgrade, certainly if you can do it from out of the box, and that's where we want to head.
Yeah. But I wonder if you found huge differences between ADFS implemented, say, in Microsoft Azure versus ADFS implementation, OAuth in ADFS 3.0, that is on-premises implementation. Are there any substantial differences?
Well, we're still playing with that right now. I don't know if you're aware of it, but the ADFS model as we use it on-prem is not supported in Azure today. So taking a CRM instance and applying ADFS IFD has some challenges doing that in Azure, just the way it's set up. So they're working through that. It was one of the things that we talked about as far as, you need this to be a production environment, right? So I think it's still early to talk performance and what it can do there, but it's certainly one of the key pillars of strength for Microsoft and what they're focused on there. Hey, Joel, another one came up for me that I was thinking about the top 10 list.
Yeah.
Mobile devices. And I'm talking about cell phones, tablets, etc. And it's not as much as the actual physical device, but it's more of not reading your requirements, right? Sure. If you look at some of the tools that are out there, that Microsoft's providing, etc., there's very specific flavors. A lot of people don't realize that, certain feature functionality set is available on a Surface, right? But it's not available on an iPad. So when they show iPhone and iPad, you need to be very careful about looking at the specs to see what's supported.
Right. You got the open up browser button on the iPad, but you don't have the open browser button on the iPhone.
Yeah, I think that you're going to see. I saw. I don't know the name of the tool. Maybe you do, George or Joel. But there's a tool out by Microsoft now that actually takes the Android application. You change one line of code and it works in a Windows mobile phone. Have you guys seen that?
Yeah. Yeah, it's part of their tooling, and that's more of a developer thing, though, right? Somebody could take their existing app and put it out for Windows.
But I see that building a test harness for that and adding iOS to that. Now you have the capabilities to run the code across all the different devices, test if it works or not.
But aren't we turning into Java with the promise of write once, run everywhere? This promise turned into write once, debug everywhere. So aren't we turning into that?
Well, you got to admit, it's been a good deployment for us, right? It's definitely something the community needed as far as an out-of-the-box mobile solution that you're not charged another $50 like you are when you go to Salesforce for mobile, right? So it's included with the app. For us, not having, JScript is handled, the workflows are handled, all of those things are handled out of the box. That's a nice start. So the penalty to have to be, kind of current on your hardware, I can live with that. Again, the point is to make sure you don't go in blindly and think that just because it says iPad that your iPad's going to work. You need to go off and check that, the iOS version. And then, Joel, the other thing that we've been learning through support is that the iOS app, users are usually having their own devices. Bring your own device to the party, right?
Right.
Well, what happens is they update their iOS. So now iOS new update comes up. Guess what? CRM's not tested or supported on that update, and now you can't roll back either.
And that's getting to one of my sessions for CRM UG is why you should keep up with the rapid release cycle. And one of the reasons is the users are going to be using their iPhones and iPads. They're going to want to install iOS 9 when it comes out, And to keep up with that, you're going to need to keep up. Well, Chris, I appreciate you joining us. I think we could talk about ADFS for 3 hours. I don't know if anyone would actually listen to a 3-hour conversation about ADFS, but I'm sure we could have it. But I appreciate you joining us. Before you go, though, if somebody wants to read your blogs or follow you on Twitter or whatever, what's the best way for them to do that?
At Twitter, it's at Cognetta, CCOGNETTA. My blog is cognettacloud.com. You can get me on there. I'll also be at Summit with an ADFS session as well as several other sessions regarding upgrading and the track of upgrading, both from a business perspective, choosing cloud, things like that. And then I'll be in the MVP sessions with George and Joel. So thank you guys for having me, and looking forward to seeing you guys in a couple weeks.
When are you going to submit some tips of the day about ADFS?
Oh, man, that's a George question. I know it is. Sure. I think I have a lot of those tips and tricks on the website that are mine, but I'd be certainly glad to repurpose them and send them back to you guys.
Well, us MVPs, we're not opposed to repurposing, so.
Works for me.
Well, Sean, we missed you this week. Hopefully you'll be back next week or next episode. And thanks to Chris Cognetta for joining us. Thank you, George. I think this was a very informative podcast. I learned a lot about ADFS from it.
Absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. I learned something that I didn't know before about ADFS, particularly about troubleshooting. So that's great. I think we should have Chris over a bit more and to talk about customer support and things like that, not customer support and how to handle difficult customers. Maybe we can.
Yeah, troubleshooting CRM, especially some of those weird cases where it's a chain of events where one thing leads to another, which leads to another. So
absolutely.
Anyway, well, join us next time.
Until next time, and hope we will have our Mr. Hobbit back. So,
when he comes back from his great journey.
Yes, from Mordor or wherever he is right now.
This has been CRM Audio, Microsoft Dynamics CRM podcast. You can hear previous episodes on our website, crm.audio. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, follow us on Twitter at CRM Audio, or leave us a comment on our Facebook page, facebook.com/CRM podcast. If you have any topic suggestions or questions that you would like for us to answer on a future episode, please drop us an email at voice@crm.audio. Special thanks to Dale Simmons for our theme music. Go check out his website, dalesimmons.com. Please join us next time on CRM Audio.